A very good afternoon and welcome to The Ambassador, where we debunk global diplomacy and geopolitics. I am your ambassador, Susan Nganga. Today, we'll start our broadcast in Senegal as it is facing deepening human food crisis, with millions struggling to afford basic necessities as hunger rises and prices soar. The World Food Programme has warned that inflation, climate change, and supply chain disruptions are exacerbating the crisis, particularly during the fasting month of Ramadan. Here's more on that report by our very own correspondent Irene Juguna.
Senegal is dealing with a severe food crisis as soaring prices and food shortages affect millions of people. The country is experiencing unprecedented inflation, pushing essential goods beyond the reach of many families. The situation has become especially dire during Ramadan, a time when many families traditionally come together for meals, but now they are struggling to put food on the table.
Going without food leaves students exhausted and unmotivated. It's one of the reasons many drop out of school in this community. Most are too ashamed to admit they haven't eaten, but the struggle is real and the conditions are getting worse.
According to the World Food Programme, a combination of climate change, disruptions in global supply chains, and rising inflation has left Senegal vulnerable to one of the worst food shortages in recent memory. Prices for staple foods like rice, oil, and wheat have skyrocketed, making it difficult for families to afford even the basics. As hunger continues to rise across Senegal, families are desperately trying to survive amid the soaring cost of basic goods. The coming months will be critical in determining whether the government and aid organizations can provide the necessary support to the most in need. Reporting for GBS News, Irene Juguna.
Thank you, Irene, for that report. Now, Sudan's ongoing conflict has taken a toll on humanitarian aid, with the Rapid Support Forces imposing new restrictions on deliverings in regions they control. These moves are intensifying the suffering in famine-stricken areas where displaced families face severe food shortages and organizations are now struggling to navigate increasing bureaucratic hurdles and rising costs, further worsening the country's dire situation. Teresa Tiengo brings us that report.
The Rapid Support Forces in Sudan are imposing new restrictions on aid deliveries in areas under their control, worsening the humanitarian crisis, especially in famine-stricken regions like Darfur. Aid workers report that the RSF is demanding higher fees, overseeing local staff recruitment and blocking access to critical areas, which is further hindering the relief efforts. These actions are part of the RSF's broader strategy to gain international legitimacy and raise funds while it faces military setbacks, particularly as the Sudanese army retakes ground in the capital, Khartoum. The restrictions have led to significant delays in aid reaching affected populations, with the travel permits for humanitarian organizations becoming harder to obtain. The situation is dire in places like Al-Fashir, where displaced families are at risk of starvation. Despite claims from SAHO, the RSF's aid management agency, that it is only following legal procedures, humanitarian groups argue that these actions are worsening the crisis and could signal how the RSF plans to govern if it gains more control over the country. Teresa Tiengo, GBS News.
Burundi's President Evariste Ndayishimiye has promised to retaliate back to Rwanda if they attack them. Ndayishimiye states that Rwanda is aiming to attack his country using Burundians, a move he stated that he is on the radar and he will pounce back to defend his nation. The president states that Rwanda is planning to conquer its neighbors for its good, hence threatening to affect the peace in the region. Davis Karani brings us that report.
We are mobilized. Together, we know that we will respond if they attack us.
The relationship between two nations bordering each other, that is Rwanda and Burundi, is falling apart after the president of Burundi, Evariste Ndayishimiye, spoke over plans by Burundi to attack Rwanda the same way they did to Congo.
When they will attack us, we will attack them. But now we don't have any plan to attack Rwanda. We want to resolve that problem with dialogue. Is why when they wanted to attend Bujumbura, passing by East DRC, if Bujumbura is near when they pass by DRC, Kigali also is near when we pass by Kirundo, by the north.
According to Ndashimie, he stated that he is aware of the strategies and has engaged Rwanda's president on several occasions over peace talk issues, and has stated that he will not sit back and see his country getting attacked by Rwanda, but instead he will retaliate back if the situation forces.
The question can be, Rwanda can be the field of war, Burundi, the field of war, and the DRC also. So it will be regional. It's why we ask to the people who wanted to help, to advise Rwanda, to continue to advise him, not to aggress the neighbor countries, because they don't know what will happen when they attack Burundi. They don't know.
Rwanda has been accused of engaging DRC in the war currently happening, and their plan to start the battle with Burundi threatens peace within the East African region and the SADC countries that might require external peace help to restore peace back, which, according to Ndashimie, will not help the region and the differences can be solved within.
It's easy to make a peace without enough foreign power, because the problem is internal problem.
Davis Karani for GBS Ambassador, Nairobi.
Thank you, Davis, for that report. Now, former Red Army function member Daniel Klatter faces trial in Germany after decades on the run. Arrested in February after living under a false identity, Klatter is accused of attempted murder, robbery, and illegal firearm possession. If convicted, she could face life in prison. Authorities say she and 2 others continued criminal activities long after militant group disbanded. Police are still searching for the alleged accomplices. Vivian Wanjala has more.
One of the last alleged members of the Red Army faction, Daniel Klatter, went on trial in Germany on Tuesday. Klatter, now in her mid-60s, was arrested in February 2024 after ending authorities for 30 years. She had been living under a false identity in Berlin apartments where police found weapons, wigs and cash. Klatter is accused of attempted murder, robbery and illegal possessions of firearms. If convicted, she could face life in prison. The Red Army faction, also known as Baader-Meinhof-Gun, was a left-wing militant group that carried out murders and kidnappings in Germany from the 1970s to the 1990s. The group was responsible for the deaths of about 30 people, including German politicians, businessmen, and US soldiers. Although the Red Army faction disbanded in 1990s, prosecutors say Klatter and 2 accomplices continued criminal activities to fund their lives on the run. Between 1999 and 2016, they allegedly carried out a series of robberies, stealing nearly 3 million from armored vehicles and supermarkets. Police are still searching for 2 other suspects. Klatter's lawyer previously questioned the charges, but has not commented on the trial. Vivian Wanjala, GBS News.
Thank you, Vivian, for that report. And that's all for now on our current segment. We'll be back after this break. Stay tuned and we'll be back.
Anza wiki yako kwa njia sahihi kwa GBS Jumatatu.
Niko nawe hadi mida ya saa 4 asubuhi. Kwanza niseme asante kwa kuzidi kufuatilia na kutazama vipindi vyetu ambavyo huwa tunakuandalia hapa ndani ya GBS TV Jumatatu. People are now seeing the money that have been given to church as a bribe.
Jiunge nasi kila Jumatatu asubuhi kuanzia saa 1:30.
Nimesikia mwenzangu akifanya hesabu hapo ya vile ambavyo miungano zitakuwa. Ruto is going to fail whether with Raila or without Raila.
Kuna mahali anakosea akisema ati Raila na Ruto wataungana. Hakuna kuungana iko hapo, ndugu yangu, aje nikwambie ukweli.
Hadithi za kunoga.
Ukiangalia Wakenya, wananchi wa Kenya, pia hao maisha yao imedhulumiwa kwa kuongezwa kwa taxes, ziko very high taxes. So the statement by Rigathi Gachagua is just statement ya kumcheck that we can see you we can see between the lines.
Na mazungumzo yenye nguvu ya kukuletea utulivu kwa wiki yako.
ati Raila ataingia UDA hapo
hiyo ni ndoto mimi yote nasema
hawezi, sababu
nasema hivi mheshimiwa, ikiwa
Raila itakuwa, mimi naona itakuwa
hadi saa 4 za asubuhi kwa majadiliano ya kusisimua.
Mheshimiwa Rais William Samoei Ruto ajue ya kwamba sasa yeye ni president wa Kenya. Sio mambo ya kufanyia wana Kenya mzaha. Kupoteza biashara kwa siku moja katika CPD, nafikiria ni jambo ambalo ni rahisi.
Usikose, ingia kwenye GPS TV. Anza Jumatatu yako kwa kusudi.
If the government does not spend, my brother, hakuna maendeleo inaonekana, hakuna barabara zinatengenezwa, hakuna dawa kwa hospitali, my friend, economies will not grow.
Tuonane panapo majaliwa yake Mwenyezi Mungu.
GPS Jumatatu, palipo mjadala wa leo na mwelekeo wa kesho.
And the question of the day is, can you survive without internet?
Ngumu, plus kwa chile hizo story tu zote zikupite ni ngori.
Niwaambie ukweli. Like hii ni kama kuambia mtu mwenye alikuwa amezoea kushindana nguo, mwambie toa nguo ushinde uchi. Hiyo huku atriki kwa sababu sasa like ilikuwa imekuingia kwa kichwa kabisa.
Mimi nimesomea day school na niocha. So kukuwa na simu hadi ni ile katururu, si smartphone, ni ile katururu.
Sasa unaweza kaa holi ya bila simu.
Kuspend hii most of the time kwa simu. Also you need to run skills. So nilikutana na later hapa nikakuwa player huko. And then I started learning skills. Digital skills.
Yes, hadi siku mbili haiwezi.
Kwa wiki naachilia hata kama ni siku mbili ama sometimes na extend to wiki nzima. Napata shiki simu yangu.
Everywhere, GBS.
Welcome back to the bulletin now. At least 18 people have tragically lost their lives as wildfire continue to ravage South Korea's southeastern region. Thousands of residents have been forced to flee their homes as the fire spread uncontrollably, making it one of the country's most devastating forest fires in decades. Erin Juguna has more.
The wildfires in South Korea's southeastern provinces have claimed at least 18 lives, and the toll could rise as the fires continue to rage. Fueled by strong winds and dry conditions, the blazes have spread rapidly across the region, forcing thousands of families to flee their homes. More than 27,000 residents have been evacuated, and authorities have mobilized thousands of firefighters, with military personnel also called in to help control the flames. Fire has already destroyed over 15,000 hectares of land, leveling entire neighborhoods and leaving many displaced. The government has declared the affected areas as specialized disaster zones, signaling the severity of the crisis. The government has vowed to support the victims and continue the fight against one of the country's worst forest fires in decades. Reporting for GBS News, Irene Juguna.
For the 6th day, protests have continued to engulf Turkey, with calls for President Erdogan to step down. The protest comes after the Istanbul mayor, Ekrem, was arrested on corruption allegations. Victor Dunn tells us more.
Hundreds of thousands of protesters have taken to the streets in Turkey, demanding an end to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's 20-year rule to come to an end. The violent protest was sparked by Istanbul city mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu's arrest over corruption allegations. President Imamoglu, who is President Erdogan's main political rival, said the arrest was politically motivated. On Sunday, Republican People's Party CHP had named Imamoglu as their presidential candidate. At least 1,333 people, including journalists, have been arrested following the protest, according to the authorities in Turkey. The opposition CHP party leader Oscar Özel has avowed that the protest will continue. Victor Uzing, the ambassador.
Thank you, Victor, for that report. Now, former FIFA President Blatter and former UEFA President Michael Platini have been acquitted once again in a corruption case that has spanned over a decade. The Swiss Criminal Court cleared the pair of all charges, including fraud, mismanagement, and misappropriating over $2 million FIFA funds. This ruling comes after an appeal against their initial acquittal in 2022, marking a decisive win for the two. Elvis Muyodi has more.
Sepp Blatter and Michel Platini have been acquitted for the second time in a corruption case that has lasted more than a decade. The Swiss Criminal Court cleared the former FIFA president and UEFA president of all charges, including fraud, mismanagement, and misappropriation of over $2 million FIFA funds in 2011. This ruling came after an appeal against the initial acquittal in 2022, marking a significant legal victory for both men. Blatter, now 89, was relieved outside the court after the decision. He reflected on the emotional toll the case had taken on him and his family, expressing gratitude for finally having the charges behind him.
I am happy that the 10
prosecution
years
of the
is now
FIFA by some
over.
Swiss federal prosecutors
I have my
that
own
lasted
back.
10 years
I will be
is now.
Sorry for that. Now, an Oscar-winning Palestinian filmmaker was released from Israeli detention on Tuesday after being arrested during a violent raid by Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank. Hamdan Bilal, co-director of the acclaimed documentary No Other Land, was assaulted by settlers following an incident in which they attacked a neighbor's house. The raid marks another violent chapter in the escalating tensions between settlers and Palestinian communities in the region. Abdi Hamid Ali brings us that report.
Bilal, who was injured during the attack, described the horrifying events that unfolded outside his home. After witnessing the settlers' assault on his neighbors, he was pushed to the ground and verbally harassed by soldiers, who then pointed their guns at him.
What's happened there? I'm just filming 2 shots. And then when I saw the settlers become more and more and attack, throw stones and destroyed everything, I back to my house because I was so scared if they coming to my family and my kids.
This incident is part of a broader pattern of settler violence in the West Bank, with attacks on Palestinian villages and livestock theft becoming more frequent. Palestinians and human rights activists allege that the Israeli authorities often stand by and fail to intervene. Bilal's wife, Lamia, revealed that the settlers had gathered around their house, prompting her husband to step outside to protect it before he was attacked and arrested.
Imagine your family, your kids inside the home, and you need to protect them, okay? You just close the door and you are outside filming what's happening when the soldiers and the settler Shem Tov Lusky, he's coming. Because in that moment, just I was thinking about my family and my kids.
Bilal, who won an Oscar for his movie No Other Land, sheds light on the human rights violation the Palestinians in the West Bank faces. The world continues to watch closely, hoping for a resolution that prioritizes human dignity and mutual respect. This is Abdi Hamid Ali, GBS News.
Thank you, Abdi, for that report. Now, a major security controversy in Washington. Senate Democrats are calling out President Trump's intelligence officials after a journalist was accidentally added to a group chat discussing sensitive military plans. Questions are growing about how this happened and whether classified information was exposed. Triza Tiengo now reports.
You know, again, this pattern of an amazing cavalier attitude towards classified information is reckless, sloppy, and stale.
Senate Democrats led by Mark Warner criticized former President Donald Trump's intelligence officials after a journalist was accidentally added to a group chat where sensitive military plans were discussed. The Atlantic's editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg reported that Defense Secretary Pete shared details about planned strikes against Iran-backed forces in Yemen. The mistake caused outrage among security experts and led Democrats and some Republicans to call for an investigation.
It's obviously dangerous, both the mishandling of classified information and the deliberate destruction of federal records are potential crimes that ought to be investigated immediately. And I want to make clear that I'm of the view that there ought to be resignation, starting with the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of Defense.
Trump's National Intelligence Director and CIA Director John testified that no classified information was shared.
That there was no classified material that was shared.
However, some senators questioned their claims.
This sloppiness, this incompetence, this disrespect for our intelligence agencies and the personnel who work for him is entirely unacceptable. It's an embarrassment. Senator, you need to do better. You need to do better.
Trump defended his national security advisor Michael, who mistakenly invited the journalist to the chat.
He's a very good man, and he will continue to do a good job.
Former officials noted that military plans are usually classified and should not be discussed on unsecured messaging apps like Signal. Triza Tiengo, GBS News.
We'll keep you more updated as that report develops. And that's all for today here at The Ambassador. Thank you for joining us as we uncover the latest development. We'll continue to bring you these updates and these stories and more as they unfold. Remember, this is The Ambassador, where we debunk global diplomacy and geopolitics. I have been your ambassador, Susan Nganga. Good afternoon.